All right. So I forget if you've been here for earlier training sessions, but basically, the way I like to do things is I like to play a couple of games with people and then talk to them and try and kind of help them get an understanding of what I feel like they could work on. I tend to avoid giving answers in favor of asking questions that I think you can answer in order to level up. Because for me, that's the fun part in fighting games. I think that's the fun part for most people. So let's play a couple games. Let's do this. Yeah.
Good luck.
Also, hell yeah, play Under Night on your work laptop. That shit is surprising. So I have like an old Surface that I bought a while ago, and I bought a refurb because it was cheap. It runs Guilty Gear just fine, or surprisingly well. Like it drops a couple frames, but it's all right. But it chokes on Under Night and BlazBlue Cross Tag, which surprised the heck out of me. Ooh. Ooh, nice. Good corner pressure. What up, Kengo? What up, Shablumps? Hey! Hey!
Duel 2. Keep on rocking. Duel 3. Turn up the heat.
Nice. Woo! Nice blitz.
Heaven or hell. Duel 1. Let's rock.
The classic.
Duel 3. All or nothing.
Nice. Oh, fuck, I dropped it. Cool. If anyone was wondering earlier, if they didn't catch the Why I Hate Leo video, I feel like seeing Chip get hit in this set here should have communicated pretty clearly. Oh.
Duel 2. All or nothing.
Oh, that was bad. Woo!
Heaven or hell. Duel 1. Let's rock.
Oh no! Thought for sure I'd get that meter in time.
Duel 2. Turn up the heat.
That sucks. So, the challenge in this matchup for Chip is essentially If Chip plays it perfectly, he should win. But if Chip fucks up once, he will most likely lose. His defensive options are okay, but he simply can't afford to take any, like, even, like, meterless combos from Leo, because he'll just eat a ton of shit. And so what happens is essentially is that, like, if I play a perfect game, then I should win the match, but I have to work really hard for that. Like, mentally, there's just a whole bunch of, like, discipline and focus and patience that I need to rely on if I want to play this matchup well. And the Leo, like, discipline, focus, and patience are the exact opposite of what good Leo players are rewarded for. So in terms of outcome, it might be at Chip's advantage. I think that's how, like, good players think of it. But in terms of work, very different. Nice. Too much. Nice. Let's see. Sunlight Nomad, let me know when you show up if you're in chat, just so I know I have you all queued up and ready to go next. Since we've got some extra time, we'll play a couple games with. This is actually good Leo matchup practice for me, which is nice.
Duel 1. Let's rock.
Cool.
Duel 2. All or nothing.
The drops.
It's not over yet.
Nice. That would have been a really good throw bait. Hey.
Duel 3. Keep on rocking. It's not over yet.
That's dead shit. Graffiti Bandit, we're doing private one-on-ones right now. I'll open up the lobby to folks after we're done with this, or the next person rather. Ooh. I thought I was gonna whiff. Almost bursted, but I stopped myself. Good job, Patrick. Way to show some restraint.
Duel 3. All or nothing.
Oh, that was a mistake. Ooh, good blitz. Ooh, that's bad. Nice air throw. Woo! That button hits behind you? Are you fucking kidding me? Alright, so do we have our second client in here? Sunlight Nomad. Let me know if you're here.
Duel 1. Let's rock. Duel 2. Keep on rocking.
Ooh. Nice. Oh no! I want to be in the corner. Damn. Ah!
Duel 3. Keep on rocking.
call for Sunlight Nomad, aka Shelby. Where are you at?
Heaven or hell. Duel 1. Let's rock.
Ooh.
Duel 2. All or nothing.
The big buttons. Ooh. Ooh, there's a blitz there, wasn't there? Ooh.
Heaven or hell. Duel 1. Let's rock.
Ooh, nice throw. The biggest button. Ooh, nice backdash. Ooh.
Duel 2. All or nothing.
Ooh. Round start drop kick. I like it. Oh, that's a waste. And a fuck up. Ooh. Wow. I stole that one. Whew.
Duel 3. Turn up the heat.
Oh. You'll never expect 2 dragon punches. Nice. Ah! Good shit. All right, that's a good place to stop and talk. So I want you to hop in chat, and I want you to tell me if there's one thing you think that went particularly well or particularly poorly for you in that matchup. Right off the top of my head, I've got to say, obviously, reasonably solid Leo player. Feels like you had a good grasp of how to use a lot of his stuff. Okay, yeah. I will wait for you to bring up Twitch. Why don't you holla in chat when you're there? I guess you can't hear that, so I will wait. Okay, so while you are, since you're typing, it'll take a little bit longer for you to do this. But what I want you to do is I want you to type out one thing that you think you did well and one thing that you think you could have improved on in that set. On my end, so obviously you're certainly a competent Leo player. You were using a bunch of his tools effectively. You were generally hitting combos. You had solid corner pressure. You played it neutral about as well as I would expect a Leo player to play. So this isn't like this isn't newbie level stuff. A lot of what I'm going to suggest you work on is going to be pretty specific. The first thing I noticed is, so one thing I've been practicing in this matchup is I've been trying to pay more attention to when Leo is crouch blocking, not just for high-low mix-up purposes, but also because that tips me off that you're thinking about doing, or that you're keeping your anti-air, I forget what it's called, but the flash kick thing charged, right? And frankly, that's a tell that you're not going to be able to dodge completely, because you will often want that flash kick chambered up and ready to go, especially against chip. Like, the rewards are very good, but you need to be blocking standing some of the times when you're in a pressure situation, just to tell me that you don't always have that chambered, right? Because if I know you always have it chambered, then it's on your mind. And trust me, Leo players think about it all the time. Like, I was actually impressed that that I wasn't baiting them more than I was. Right, and even then, like, you can watch through those 10 games we played or whatever, and find a lot of whiff DPs, right, or a lot of whiff flash kicks. So what you want to do is you want to be sparing with when you use it, right? You want to bring them out at just the right moment, right? And against good players, they'll be looking to see if you're charging down or not. So mixing it up a little bit, even when you don't have to, right? Choosing to think about other anti-airs, or other reversal options rather, is good. And towards the end of the set, you were starting to use blitz a little bit more, and I thought that was really good, right? Because then it forces me to consider multiple multiple reversal options. Your anti-airs overall were super solid, and that is where Leo tends to live or die in this matchup, I think. In general, I don't like contesting the ground with you if I can get away with it. And early on, I was getting a lot of counter hit jump dusts, but you adapted to that really well, and started anti-airing me with 6P and air throw a lot more. Those are really good. I would encourage you to think about basically, like, think about capitalizing off those anti-airs when you get them, right? It was actually really funny. Like, you're probably one of the less aggressive Leo players that I've played against. Your block pressure honestly wasn't that scary. You were getting most of your hits in from converting in neutral, off of like counter hit, I want to say stand slash or hard slash, into combos, or anti-airing into combos. And when I started jumping in less, and when I started playing the horizontal game a little bit more, I found that, like, I wasn't really that scared of losing the horizontal game against you, because I wasn't worried about high-low mix-ups, and I wasn't worried about left-right mix-ups. You just weren't using that many of those. And honestly, that is the scariest thing about playing against Leo, is having to block some shit and realizing that you're just gonna have to hold some nasty mix-ups. You can definitely sharpen up that part of your game, because that's where defending against him is scary. Like, honestly, it was a threat that I normally feel very acutely against other Leo players that I didn't feel against you. Which isn't to say you weren't doing work, but the work was, you were really consistent. You're surprisingly consistent at anti-airing me, and you were able to convert that into good damage and momentum and stuff. You were hitting a lot of stray hits. You just, like I said, your block pressure wasn't nearly as scary as it could have been. Some of that might have been because I think you were expecting the counter stance out of the like back turn stance, the counter to do a little bit more work than it was actually doing. But yeah, it just felt like, so after the first couple exchanges, I can get an idea of your risk profile and you can get an idea of mine, right? And I never really felt like I was punished too heavily for hitting buttons, or punished for dragon punching, or even honestly punished for just blocking. Like, there weren't that many times where I was super scared of your ground pressure. Now, obviously, that's something that Leo's really good at. So all you got to do is just, honestly, like, you probably just want to add a couple more setups. Right? Just always have a rotating set of setups that you're working through. My guess is that there's probably a couple setups on the ground that you feel super comfortable with, but when I blocked some of them, you just kind of didn't feel like busting them out again. Like I said, it was you were definitely one of the more conservative Leo players that I've played against, and you want to be conservative sometimes, right? You want to go ham in my face sometimes too. Otherwise, you get a lot less scary in neutral, right? Because if you play against a chip player, like, forget me, if you go up against like bears, you go up against like, well, there's a whole bunch of chip players out there that better me than bears, then they're going to be playing the matchup a little bit more disciplined. And if they're not scared of the block pressure, then they kind of feel like they have all day in neutral to just pick at you until you die. And it's hard work for the chip, but it can also be very frustrating for the Leo player too. As far as the stuff you identified, so you said, I think pressure went well. Yeah, so I already talked about that. I think you were getting results, but like, for one thing, specifically on the pressure, like, you weren't using the overhead much. And I can expect that like people who are familiar with the matchup are going to be blocking the overhead more. But that overhead is scary, right? And if you're not throwing that out, then I feel a lot safer in my ability to just sit and wait for you to do something else. The fireball was the big thing early on that I noticed. You're just using that a lot. And the number one thing that pretty much anyone playing against Leo has to know is that is that if I let you get fireballs for free, then you win, because you basically have sonic boomed your way through the ground game, and I have to make you earn an advantage in the ground game, right? That's pretty much how the matchup works. Is I need to be containing your neutral, I can't let you get hits in, and I need to make sure you don't get free pressure from the fireball. And so that way you should be only spending meter. I should be forcing you to spend meter on the fireball if you want momentum in neutral. And if you're not, then I should be able to punish you. And you could see, like, if you go through the match videos, you'll see like I hit a lot of counter hit jump dusts that were specifically shitting on the projectile. So it's just one of those things that, like, you want to be greedy early on just to test them. Like, if we were playing in tournament and I didn't know who you were, you didn't know who I was, you would want to see if you could get away with that early on and see how vigilant they are about punishing it, right? And if they're not vigilant, then yeah, continue to steal those turns, right? But if they're pressuring you pretty heavily when it comes to the fireball specifically, then it's clear that they're looking for it, right? Now, you adapted by anti-airing me a lot, and I was just staying in the air way too much during that set, so you got a lot of mileage out of that. That was good. But there were a lot of kind of free just corner carry combos into my corner mix-ups that I got just because you're fireballing a bit too much. So you want to, that's one of those things that, like, you can think of any of these things I'm talking about, whether it's you're not using the overhead, or you're not using the DP, or you're using you're telegraphing the DP too much. the idea is not to never do these things or to do these a fixed amount of times. It's to make sure you're mixing it up so I have a hard time reading you, right? If you're consistent in your risk profile the whole time, then it's really easy for me to predict, or not predict completely, but get closer to predicting what you're going to do. Because in my mind, I'll be able to model your behavior in any given situation such that maybe it's 2 or 3 options instead of all the options the character has. So I would encourage you to like actually go back and watch this play and think about like some of the patterns you're using here, because they can be useful patterns, right? Like they got you the wins, obviously, so they're not that bad, but you want to be able to mix it up, right? You want to be able to have like a super YOLO on one end and super conservative on the other, and a whole bunch of shades of gray, I guess, in between, so that you can figure out your opponent's risk profile and then adapt yours to beat theirs, right? And so figuring that out it's taking a look at all the risky things and not risky things you do and figuring out like what the patterns are that you're doing. So you do that, and then you'll have a much more solid and well-rounded Leo. And I will hate this matchup even more. I hope that was helpful. Do we have, I know it's almost 9. I don't think our second client showed up. That would be Sunlight Nomad. I do not see a Sunlight Nomad in chat. If that's you, Shelby, whoever, let me know in the next couple minutes. Otherwise, I'm just going to open up the lobby for games. But yeah, that was super fun. I'm actually probably gonna go review that tape myself and see what I can level up on the Leo matchup there, because there's a lot of shit I was surprised by in that. You have a habit of playing too conservative if you're uncomfortable in a matchup. Yeah, it makes sense, honestly. It's funny because I think the knee-jerk reaction for most Leo and Slayer players in unfamiliar matchups is to fucking swing. And if it's not, it should be, because that tends to be like the optimal strategy, at least to start, especially when you're in like a tournament like best 2 of 3 situation and there just isn't that much time to adapt. Yeah, you want to be able to think about your play not as something fixed, but as something that you can vary on command, right? Because that's when the game honestly gets a lot more fun, and when you'll feel a lot more control over your character. And it's really cool because you can feel yourself going from it's usually something that's not working to something that does, right? It's neat, actually. There's a couple different drills that I used to do. I could bring them back, I guess, but I used to do in order to help me mix it up more. And it would be arbitrary stuff. It would be like, for the first 15 seconds, I'm going to go fucking wild, and I'm going to take a lot of risks, right? Whatever that means. In any situation that I'm in, I'm going to do like the highest risk, highest reward option. And then on 15 seconds, I'll stop, and I'll play super conservative and super just patient and like try and react to stuff and try and be fairly low risk overall. And then 15 seconds go by and I change it again. And then when you get better, you can flip the switch to every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds. And before you know it, or you can do it in like interactions, right? Like you can be like, oh, from this neutral encounter up through the first round of knockdown, I will be super conservative, and the next one I will be super risky, and so on and so on. But yeah, if you think about these games as essentially contests, they're like races to try and read the other person's mind as fast as possible. Like once you know that they know, then you should be changing your shit up so that what they think they know, they don't actually know. Right, and that's why I point to things like the tell on you charging your flash kick is like a really easy example of that, right? Like when I see that we're standing in neutral at like mid screen and you're crouching, there's only one thing that you're thinking about and you're waiting for it, and that's why me doing the teleport that stays in place works, right? And you feel like an idiot while you're soaring up above because you just got baited by a bait teleport, right? It's because in those circumstances, it becomes very easy to look and see what you're thinking, right? past learning the game, past learning the move interactions, past learning all the like different properties that every character has, and all the blah 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 blah. This game, like these games, all these games, not just Guilty Gear, are about reading your opponent's mind, right, to varying levels of confidence. And so once you realize that, then you don't just try and read your opponent's mind faster. You also have to consciously manipulate the signals that you're giving off, right, that they're taking up, because then their reads become less useful.